Whoa, g'day guys, it's Sam here from Built Not Bought, and welcome back to another episode of Sam spent too long on the jet ski yesterday and has burnt like a lobster. Anyway, this episode guys, we're cutting the 80 series in half. Oh my God, oh, yeah. That was crazy. That's right guys, we're chopping the 80 in half today, but before we get to do that, we got some business to take care of. You may know that I've been calling out pit vipers for a while now, since the Fraser episode. It started as a bit of a piss take, but it's ended up in a few sets coming my way. So they did end up setting some out. And I've got some genuine pitties here I want to give away in this episode for a couple more episodes to come, and my Instagram if you want the chance to win yourself a set of genuine pit vipers. Make sure you watch along and find out how to win. Very simple in this one. All you do is comment down below what your ride is. Tell me what your Ford driver you own is, your love of your life, or it may be a classic car if that's your project vehicle. I don't know what your build is. Comment it down below. It's that simple, and I'm going to pick a random winner in next week's episode to give this genuine pair of pit vipers to. That simple. Now, of course, before we go any further, we do have the winner of last week's episode for the pit vipers, and the winner was Archer Watson. Now, I think the question was, what would you prefer better, the Patrol or the 80 series? Good answer, mate. You love the OG Patrol. So send me a message on Instagram and I'll send these pitties out to you. Righto, so I was sitting here looking at this thing the other day and I made the decision to split the cab off the chassis and make it so much easier for working around the back end, doing a full rust proofing and suspension install. I could have done this on the Patrol, but I didn't because it's a ute and you can basically access the rear anyway. But with this, I had a little look and it's quite simple. I'll just disconnect the steering column. I've already taken out all the body mounts. I think there's 8 of them in total. Taken off the rear bar and step, and just had a look around. Most of the wiring, fuel lines and that's on the rail, wiring's on the body. It looks like it'll split in half. So I'm gonna start lifting this thing up slowly, make sure nothing's still connected, and hopefully we'll get this thing apart so we can start working on the chassis separately. Look at that. Nothing was connected, that's amazing. Voila. Alrighty, there we go. We've got a bare chassis now. In my opinion, this is the best way to rebuild a car if you're doing a ground up rebuild, so you can get right into the things, respray it, coat it and everything. But just before we get to the rust proofing and coating, I'm gonna actually rebuild the diff so I can seat it all up, put new gaskets in and then coat it. So we're gonna do the rear diff and then probably won't film the front because it's basically the same thing, but we're gonna be rebuilding all the bearings and that. I'm gonna be putting E-lockers in as well. So let's get the axles out, the centers out, start putting this gear in here. Alrighty guys, so we've got the diff out now and I'm going to be installing the E-lockers. Now I've got a front and rear locker now. They're the Harrop Eaton E-lockers. Now I've been using these for years and years. They have stood the test of time with my cars. They've been in the Patrol for ages. The Patrol before that had them and now I'm running them again. So I've done plenty of videos on these. There's actually a dedicated locker install video and a full complete video about the information, the technical side and how they operate. So I'll try and remember to link them down below. But as here, we've got the front and rear. This is the rear diff we've got out at the moment. We'll switch them over, get the front one done the same, and it'll be all locked up, ready to go. Alrighty, so the rear one's getting pretty close to putting in now. I've got the locker installed and the ring gear on, torqued up. I did get a little bit creative. I've found a way that I torque up these kind of ring gear bolts. I've done enough of them now. I actually use the bearing press and a bit of a breaker bar in there to hold it together. Torque up the bolts. Pressed on the bearings as well, so I've got them all seated down properly. Now we can pretty much get it into the carrier. Set up all the backlash and the bearing preload. Being new bearings, you want them a little bit tighter so they can sort of bed in. Make sure you get the backlash right, check the manual. Mine's around, I think it's 0.2 to 0.15 millimeters of backlash. So I just set that up with the little micrometer, and then it's pretty much good to go back in the car. Okie dokie, now that we've got that rear diff installed, I pretty much did the exact same thing, putting the front diff in there as well. Obviously that was an E-locker too, so I went through and set all that up, did all the backlash as well, got it in with a new set of gaskets, so the front diff's ready to go together. So now we can concentrate on doing the rest of the diff. Now, in my opinion, is worthwhile doing a full swivel hub rebuild when you have a car that you don't know the history of, or you do a diff swap like this when the axles are out anyway. So these have already been stripped, so pretty much gonna start putting them together. I did end up getting a complete kit from all 4x4 spares. That's where I get most of my sort of OE type parts for these things. They supply all sorts of kits now. They came with a full bearing seal kit, swivel hub. It came with all of the wiper seals and everything, even a new plate that goes behind, which I didn't think was going to get replaced. There's also another disc there that goes on where the brake shield is. So it comes with pretty much everything. It even came with new nuts and all that. So I'm going to go through and pretty much assemble this front end. You want to make sure you use some high quality grease. So I've got some high temp nylon bearing grease here. So this is what I'm going to use to put it through. And I'll take you through actually a new fancy tool that I just discovered when I do my bearings. So we'll get into it, get stuck into that. First, I'm going to pop out this oil seal here for the axle, because that is the reason this thing needed a rebuild. The diff oil did make its way into the bearing and CV area. So that's why it kind of turned to mush and went all shit. So we're going to change that seal out first and then get into building the rest of it. Alrighty, you're just about to whack the kingpin bearings in. Now for years and years, I've been doing it the old fashioned way, putting grease on my hand and kind of scooping it in, slowly feeding the bearing, making an absolute mess. Now I was in Supercheap Auto literally yesterday and I walked across, I was trying to find just some grease and I stumbled across this tool, and it's basically a bearing greaser packer tool. What do you know? These things exist, it's absolutely crazy. So you basically just put your bearing in here. I've packed a bunch of grease underneath, it's got a little seal. Drop the bearing in and then wind this top piece down. And that'll do, hold on, let me just, I might have to turn that around a bit. I'll put it in upside down, there we go. All right, so then you pretty much just wind this down. There we go. Got it nice and clamped there. So it's basically the bearing is inside there, and then you basically just push down on, hang on. Then basically you just stand on it, and that will force the, oh look at that, that'll force the grease straight through the bearing, packing it properly, and then no dirty hands. Absolutely amazing. I was blown away when I saw this. It makes you wonder what other amazing inventions are out there that I don't know about. So that's ready to go on the car now. I'll do the same with the bottom one. I'm just gonna run a time lapse now putting that swivel hub assembly together, because very soon I'm gonna be doing a full video on servicing and preparing your car for a trip around Australia or wherever you're going. And that will include a full diff rebuild. I'm gonna go into detail about how to do this completely with everything. So we're not gonna touch on it too much today. We'll just run a time lapse, get it in, but stay tuned in that future episode if you do wanna know more about how to set up the front end of your diff, or the rear as well for that fact. With great power comes great responsibility, said everyone ever. As I continue my quest to make high-powered four-wheel drives, of course, the power comes with responsibility, which means me. I need to look after myself. I am going to be upgrading my brakes with this car. I want to have all the power in the world in this thing. You need to be able to stop again. It's cheap insurance for not only the car itself, but for you, yours truly. I mean, you got to keep yourself safe these days. So I've gone for the Bendix Ultimate Upgrade Kit. Now that comes with everything you need. It's got all the braided brake lines. It has new vented slotted rotors. It's got the full ceramic pads of the works. So while I've got this front end apart, it's a perfect time to drop these new rotors in. So the back's pretty simple. That just goes straight on, but the front with this hub assembly apart, you basically got to just change the rotor off the back of the plate here. So we'll whack this back on there, and then we'll be safe and sound out on the roads there. Alrighty guys, now we've got that front end together, the diffs all completed and buttoned up. Now one thing I forgot to mention that's specific with cruisers is they basically run all-wheel drive system all the time on the road. So what I've gone for is a two-wheel drive conversion kit. Now I got that from Mark's four-wheel drive adapters. Now they supply a full hub assembly. So you can see on the front here, we've got that locking hub so you can actually put it into two-wheel drive. Now in the kit as well, there was a center bearing you need to change too. Not sure where that goes yet. I'm pretty sure it looks like it's something that happens in the transfer case. So basically disconnect the drive to that front drive shaft. So we'll get that in as well. And then it just takes the whole load off of the front diff there. So you you're not running your front diff all the time, and skids as well. Anyway, we're gonna start putting the tires and wheels back on this thing so we can get it rolled out, because we're heading straight down to the detailing center to get a rust proofing on this thing. Right, I've just dropped the rig off at the detailing center. Now, Dean's got his work cut out with this one. There's a little bit of surface rust appearing, obviously been down the beach a few times. So they're gonna do a full rust converter on it and then a full rust proofing. So that should clean up the chassis as well. Get some black paint on there and all nice. The reason I've done it now, obviously, it is the perfect time. How often is the body off the chassis, so we can get right into all the nooks and crannies and get this thing coated properly. I'm doing it before the suspension as well, so when we get back to the workshop, we can start ripping to the suspension and you're not gonna get any overspray or anything on that kind of stuff. So we'll get it wheeled in, hopefully a couple hours, should be done, good to go. Alrighty guys, so behind me is basically the finishing product. There's a little bit more coating to go on there, but this is what I'd call polishing a turd if I ever saw one. You could see what it was before. It was on the borderline of becoming just a rusty piece of metal, but we've managed to revive it with some rust converter and some rust proofing. So now that we're gonna get it all back together, you don't have to worry about the top sides and everything. Like when you rust proof a car with a cab on, you can't really get into everything. So like I said, it was a perfect opportunity to come down and put it on before the body goes back on. So it's time to wheel the thing home, get it in the shed and start doing the suspension. All right, what is going on, legends? A couple of things before we hook into the suspension. Number one, this weekend is the Brisbane National 4x4 Outdoor Show Fishing and Boating Expo. I'm gonna be there with the 80 series and the Built Not Board truck. Now, you need to get tickets if you wanna go to the show, so make sure you click the link below and use code BNB21. That'll save you a few bucks at the checkout. So you basically gotta pick what day and time you wanna head down because of the COVID stuff. They gotta make sure the numbers are limited where they need to be. So if you wanna come down, definitely check it out. We'll be there with a bunch of merchandise and both the cars. Number two, the weekend after is the Show Your Dirt event for Queensland. This is a massive show I've been planning behind the scenes. So if you want to display your rig, this is it. It's for you guys. Next to some of the biggest, baddest rigs in Queensland, this is the show for you. So start polishing them bull bars, guys. Come down to the show. We'll be on display again, obviously, but we'll be checking out all the cars that you guys bring down. We encourage comp trucks. We encourage the stuff that come on trailers. Anything is welcome, anything and everything. We're gonna have a few exhibitors there, a few activities. We've got a live band, we've got food, we've got drink, we've got all sorts of stuff happening. So that is the 27th of March at Caboolture Showgrounds. There'll be a link down below for the Facebook event page as well. The last thing, obviously merchandise, guys. We love that you guys want to wear our brand and use it in the workshop. We've got our work shirts as well. We've got the classic tee, the singlet coming into summer, and the hoodies coming into winter. Is it winter or summer? I don't know. In Queensland, I get confused. I feel like it's winter right now because it's raining, but it's the middle of summer. Anyway, let's get looking into this suspension. Alrighty, now we're looking into the real serious stuff. We start putting the flash and shiny bits onto this build. Now, I'm like a candy store right now, but this is the full complete superior engineering kit for the 80 series. So I'm not sure on the lift jet. We're gonna get to something a little bit special in a second about what we're gonna do there, but this is basically the 3 to sort of 4 inch kit. So that's when you need to start replacing your like upper control arms. Got adjustable panhards, lower control arms are all strengthened. We've got the new Hyperflex radius arms as well for the front. And then we've gone the 2.0s. Are they 2.0 or 3.0? And then we've gone the 2.0 shocks, so they're fully adjustable with the remote resi as well. Everything to do with suspension and steering is going to be upgraded and strengthened. But we're going to do something a little bit special with the lift on this. We're going to be trying something a little bit new and different for me, and that is a full air ride suspension kit. So that essentially means I can adjust the height of the whole vehicle depending whether I'm off-road or on-road, etc. So we've got pretty much the whole kit here with your airbags. We've got a full compressor. There's a bunch of hoses and cables. It's got a full ECU. Everything's controlled. It's also got an auto leveling system. So if you're trying to sleep in the back there, you can just hit the button and it will level it for you. So that is the new thing for this build that I'm going to be trying out. So we'll get all the suspension kit installed, play with these airbags. I can basically start plumbing up all the lines on the chassis rail to plumb the air lines and electrical, but we need to wait for the body to get back on to actually put the pump in, tank and all that kind of stuff. So let's hook into it and see how we go. Alrighty, I'm just about to set up the drag link and tie rod here. Now just a quick little tech tip. I like to put a bit of anti-seize on these joints here because they're one of those things, as soon as you send your car for a wheel alignment, a couple of years down the track, these things are an absolute bitch to turn. I actually worked as a wheel alignment technician for about 2 years, so I know from experience. So I just dab a little bit of Loctite on here, and that makes sure that nothing gets in there and starts rusting these bolts away. And also keep in mind, you've got one left-hand thread and one right-hand thread to put these on there. So that's just something to keep in mind, and the ones with a little dash on the nut there is the one that's the left-hand thread. Righto, front is looking good, but check this out. There's not enough weight on it to actually get the bolts on the shock mounts, which is interesting. So I'm gonna have to wait until the body's back on. I can try and grab a bit of thread on this without the bush on it. But anyway, other than that, everything's pretty much on the front. Just the new brake line's got to go on, and the sway bar, which is the original sway bar, but the links are now on the radius arms instead of the diff. So we'll get that in and then move on to the backside. Alrighty, the back end on these are very, very simple. They're a 5-link system, basically 2 upper control arms, 2 lower control arms, and a panhard. Now the panhard's adjustable to get that width kind of crab walking thing right with the lift, and then the upper control arms are adjustable to set your pinion angle. But we've seen this a million times on this channel, so I'm gonna just run a time lapse putting this rear in. Super simple, super easy, and I tell you what, I'm loving the fact that the body's off this thing. I can climb over, undo bolts, all sorts of stuff, so let's get into it.
A few moments later.
All right, here's what we're gonna do. Doing this 5-link, it's getting a little bit boring today in the workshop, so I decided to set a little challenge for myself. I reckon I can install this whole rear arm kit in about 15 minutes. I reckon in 15 minutes, that's both control arms, panhard, everything's gotta be torqued, Loctited, set up, ready to go. But it's just the arms, not all the, I don't know, sway bar and all that other crap, but 15 minutes. Ready? Let's go. Whoa, all right, stop the clock. What did we do? 22 minutes and 54 seconds. A little bit over, but pretty close. Doesn't take that long. I tell you what though, there was a few little roadblocks in there. Actually, the hardest thing that slowed down that whole process was the rust proofing on the bolts, and the nuts were getting stuck into the socket of the rattle gun that I was using. So I was sitting there trying to pick out the nuts, which is a pain in the butt. And then I bloody lost the washer. So I was looking around, hunting around, trying to find that. I don't know how I lost a washer when it's like that big, but I reckon I would have got 15 minutes. Of course, if I didn't do those things. I'm just saying. Alrighty, airbag time. Now, I've got the rear kit I'm gonna start with first. Now, I've already gone ahead and you've got to obviously remove the rear coils and then remove the bump zone override stop in the coil tower there, not the actual bump stops themselves. Oh, and then after that, you install a plate and you've basically countersink screw into the original hole where the bump stop was. And then on the bag side, there's just a little air footing that's got to go in there. And then there's the top plate, and the top plate goes on there, and it basically marries up and sandwiches onto the plate in the car. So that's how they connect, and that's how they can be removable. It's all countersunk bolts and that. Orientation is important, so make sure you read the instructions if you're putting this in. So get these rear bags in, and then the bottom, there's just a big old bolt that screws in there. She's all set up, ready to go. All right, check it out. We got air, baby. Woo! How good is that? So what you didn't see off camera, it took a bit of fiddling around to get the bottom plates in, and I happened to pump some air in to get that thread to go through the axle and then do it up, but we're on an air ride, man. Like I said earlier, I've got to run all these air lines depending on where I'm going to set up the rest of the kit. Now, unfortunately, the front kit for these 80 series, we're on a bit of a back order for the stock, so they'll be coming soon. I'm just going to leave the coils in for now, but we are air on the rear, so I can basically full Cali lean down the road, you know, mullet in the wind, just gangster lean. That's what I'm after anyway. Pretty stoked. This is the first kind of proper air ride kit that I've used before. I only ever used the helpers before, but this is a full coil replacement. It comes with all the gear, so they're super high quality, proper Firestone bags. So sick to see how this goes on and off road. Alrighty legends, I think I'm gonna wrap up the episode there. It is pretty much a finished chassis. We've got the suspension done, the rust coating, the rust proofing, all the bearings, diffs, lockers, all that sorted. Pretty much just ready to put the body back on now. It's basically reversing what I did taking it off, so no really point in filming that. So next time you see it, it should be a car again, and we can continue on with the build. I'm pretty sure the next episode will be building the motor for this thing, which is gonna be absolutely off its head. The stuff I've got for that engine, you'll be blown away with. So, we're excited to see you guys in next week's episode, but don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you there. Please click the button to your left if you want to go and check out the latest merchandise we have on our website. If you missed last week's episode, click down below to see it. And most importantly, on the far left, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.